to explore the difference between copyright and fair use, and of course to integrate these concepts to our classroom. Karen has been an educator for 18 years. For the last 12 years, she has been an instructional technology coach leading teachers and students to embrace technology. She currently works for Beverly Hills Unified School District, supporting teachers and students at the high school. Karen is an ICT certified educator, a Google certified trainer and coach. She is the co-leader for the Google Education Group in Southern California, a Common Sense Media Ambassador, and the co-founder of EdCampLAN. She is also part of the curriculum development team for Copyright and Creativity, a non-profit organization that creates and distributes curricula related to copyright. She is passionate about providing all artists with an equitable environment to create, produce, and share. Well, I feel honored to have her with us today and to share with us, to give her the floor and to give her the opportunity to share with us all the precious knowledge that she has. Karen, welcome. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to see so many people from so many countries. Thank you for spending your evening after a day of work here. And that introduction, thank you. That is me. I have been an instructional technology coach and working in really a passion for copyright and making sure, especially now that we are using and sharing things legally. So I hope today that you get some out of it, knowing that we're all from different places. I have a little bit of everything. So just to get us going, I like to model just like I would with students when I do my presentation. So always giving norms so we know the expectations as we move forward. It helps when we're with our students to be present, to be open, to be respectful, just to understand how to behave in any environment, online or in person. Be curious and always be courageous. So just some ideas and things to look at. My learning targets for you all today are to get you more familiar with copyright and fair use and fair dealing, which I know is the UK. We'll talk about that when we get to that place in the presentation. To help you explore.
I would like to make a pause here, and I would like Roberta to help us see the chat box and the presentation. Roberta, something happened and I missed the chat.
Oh, what?
Can you?
I am actually trying to understand as well. I'm doing it now. So
okay.
Just give me a few minutes, but in the meantime, if you want to continue.
Okay, Karen, you can proceed. And sorry for the interruption. Just I would like to see the chat box, and it has been disappeared. That's why I made this interruption. Okay, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. So participants will explore how to protect yourself online when you're using resources from others, when you're sharing or you're using somebody else's work. And we'll always, our goal is to empower our students to become responsible creators. I am an ISTE certified educator. And at the end of the day, we always look back at what we want to give for our students, and we are always thinking of creating digital citizenships, that digital citizens that are respectful of other people's rights and intellectual property. So those are the two standards that we will be addressing today in our presentation. So first, I just want to tell you I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a solicitor or a barrister. I'm not any of those things. I am here. My background is in education. I did work with copyright and creativity, which is free resources. They're wonderful resources. I worked with that team to create the lesson plans. So I have a close work with that. I am also a Common Sense ambassador. So that is my background. With copyright and creativity, our group was educators and lawyers. So I have a fair understanding, and I also have lawyers at my fingertips when I'm not sure about something that I can call. But again, I am from the US, so a lot of my background is United States. I did some digging, and we're not that different. The laws, what I found, and we'll talk about it when I get into it, is that yours are actually more specific, and the United States tends to be a little bit broader, vaguer for us to figure out. But just know that I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling anybody to use things. I'm just giving you some tips and some thinking points. So let's start with what we know about copyright. And I'm going to put this, and I already did put into the chat, if you saw it, oh, my chat has disappeared. See if I can find my chat.
Yes, that's a problem. I also can't see the chat box.
I know. I'm very sorry. I'm still trying to understand because it disappeared for me as well, and I'm trying to, but the problem is that I cannot find it in any like any options, anything about the chat.
That is weird. Huh?
And it is actually, yes, it is very, very, very weird.
Okay.
Okay, we will find it. You can proceed, maybe Karen, and then we will find it. We are searching also. I am searching it also.
So I did put into the chat earlier the link to the presentation. So hopefully you've all been able to open that. And if you can, down at the bottom of this slide is a Jamboard link. And what I wanted us to be able to do was to go to this Jamboard and to look at what do we know about copyright on one slide, and then on the next board, what do you want to learn about copyright today? Oh, good. I see some people joining. That's positive. I'm sorry that I can't put the link back in, but here's what I can do. The link to my presentation is actually smaller if people didn't get it.
Do you want me to share the screen, Karen? To share my screen? Do you want?
No, I think I'm okay sharing my screen. I'm just trying to, without the chat, I'm trying to figure out how I can get the link to everybody. But it looks like people are coming on to the Jamboard. So if you're there, just, if you haven't used Jamboard before, it's the tools over here where you grab a sticky note and you just jot down what you already know about copyright or what your thoughts about copyright are now. And then what are you hoping that you learn about copyright? What is it that you wanted to? There it is. There's the chat.
I managed to do it. So can you see the chat
Perfect.
now?
We can go on. Yes.
So I just put the link to the Jamboard in the chat, so now it's in there, and I'm going to have you guys all go there and get that. And I also will put the link back for the presentation in the chat, just if there was anyone who joined after. So now you have both of those things. And if you'll just use the sticky note, you can just grab and write a quick note about anything that you think about copyright. And I don't know if you're familiar with Jamboard or Google Tools. I am a Google certified educator, so I do tend to use Google. That is, it's not our LMS, but it is what we use all the time. So on the Jamboard, you can just take a sticky note on the side panel here and type what you want into it. So I can type my response here and then just save. And then it'll pop up anywhere and I can move it to where I need to. I'm going to delete mine because we don't need that. We're going to let you guys put things down. And I'll just give us a couple of minutes to do this. That is one really good thing. We are not allowed to use every picture from Google. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to create a generation of non-Googlers. Hardest thing in the world, right? Excellent. Fabulous. So we know copyright is there to protect the creator. Fabulous. Did anyone put what they want to learn about copyright? I'll switch over the board. Property. Yes, it's literally your property. That is wonderful. Let's see if anyone's gone to the next frame, if there's anything that you are hoping to learn. My intention today is to just give you some tools, some vocabulary to help start conversations with your students, even at a young age, and get them thinking about copyright, and us always using it as second nature so that it is something that's on our minds all the time, whether or not when we're using somebody else's work. That was just my fun kind of introduction. I am going to continue on. If you want to keep going on the board, that is fine. But I'm going to start us off again with another activity. This is one from Copyright and Creativity. It's a grade 4 lesson, and the intention of this is to just get students to start talking. So if we were in a classroom, I would tell everybody right now to stand up, and I would say that I'm going to give you a series of suggestions of topics, and when your answer to what I say is a yes, then you're going to sit down. And today, since we're virtual, you can use the chat, and when one of the ideas that I put up you say yes to, then you can just say in the chat yes, and we can see how we go with that if you'd like to play along. So have you made up a song to make your friends laugh or a sad song to make them cry? We would tell our students, so if you have done that, you would sit down. If this pertains to you, if this is true for you, then you would sit down. So if any of you have done this, you can put in the chat yes. So have you ever made a video on a camera, on a phone, on an iPad computer, sent it to a family member, or posted it online? If this is true for you, you would say yes here, and students would sit down. Have you ever written a poem for your mom or dad on their birthday? Have you ever created a piece of art to share with your family and friends? Have you ever taken a photo and sent it to a family member or posted it online? So just like what's happening in our chat where the yeses are just coming in, your room, everybody has sat down. And the whole idea of an exercise like that is to get students talking about creating, because our students are creators. And what we want to do is we want our students to start seeing themselves as creators and connect their emotions to what they create and the process of sharing it. So this exercise is really building that empathy for our students as creators, but it's also building our students as the consumer, because our students as we all know, have more access to be able to share or use somebody else's work. With the internet, everything is open, everything is out there, and it's able to be found. So it's more and more important that we help our students empathize with the creator and understand that they are consumers. So the next step in this lesson, if you were going to do something like this with your students, would be then to connect what they just shared about their own feelings when creating using someone else's work by trying to connect it to another creator. So trying to say that, creating can be hard and it's a lot of work and it's difficult, but it's rewarding, and sharing what we create can be fun, and it encourages others to be creative. But as we use other people's work and as we explore the media of other people, we have to make sure that we respect and we're always fair of somebody else's creative property. So these are just some ideas, some questions to get us thinking about copyright in the classroom. So why is copyright important? It's important to the future of creativity and the internet. And I say that that's like this heavy statement, but it is so true that with the internet, it has opened us up to this world where we can literally at our fingertips find something that somebody else created and take it. And because we Google it or we found it on the internet, we automatically think we can use it. Or because maybe we're only using it with our friends or with our classroom, we don't have to worry about the creator. So beyond that, we need to understand that our students have to see this as those items, those creators are people out there who spent time making these things, and that we have to be respectful of intellectual property. So beyond the immediate needs of students, right, the future of both creativity and the internet will be affected by how we as citizens choose to interact with creative work. We want to encourage great new books, music, games, movies, and art for everyone to enjoy, but we also want to ensure that the artists can thrive, that their work and our work, is respected, because we also are creating every day. So to get creative, keep creativity flowing, and to keep creativity out, artworks to be shared, we need to all get comfortable around copyright. We need to understand that the purpose of copyright is to protect the value of the author, the academic, the researcher, the artist, the musician, and by giving the originator of the work the ability to protect it from unlicensed, uncredited usage. So what is actually protected and what's not from copyright? So copyright does cover any original creative work set down in fixed form. So anything that's written down, recorded, or digitally saved. So everything pretty much that we do, your text, the Jamboard that we just did together, those are all covered, protected by copyright. Songs, books, articles, photos, video games, movies, the selfie you took on your friend's phone, all of that is covered by copyright. So what does it not cover? Facts, ideas, discoveries, government documents, maps, phone books, if they even still have those in places, non-creative lists, so data is not covered. So that's the basics of what copyright is protecting. So one way to explain copyright to students is to tell them that copyright laws are invisible and they're active all the time. So think about it like this. Works created by others have a no trespassing sign on them. And if you simply ignore no trespassing sign on land, you'd be in violation of the law, right? So the same thing with creative works, whether it's a doodle or a picture, you would be trespassing on that land. So to use copyright work, you need to get permission. The key to use the work is permission. If you use someone else's work without permission, it would be what's called copyright infringement. So part of getting comfortable with copyright is using the vocabulary with our students, having them understand the terms that are surrounded encompass copyright, that you need to get permission before you can use someone else's work. And things like that can be just in how we talk to our students. We can ask our students, can I have permission to share your work? Even in kindergarten, you can do that. So as students get older, we can share other information. We can share court cases. So here's one actually that you can share with your students. So I don't know if you are familiar with this young adult novel, but The Poet X. This is a recent example of a missed opportunity to ask the creator for permission. So the author of this novel created this design on the cover. She found an image of a woman. Guess where she found it? Yes, she Googled and she found it online, and then she turned it into a sketch for her book. But the photo she found was actually a self-portrait of a woman who happens to be a professional photographer. When the photographer found out about it, she, of course, was very unhappy, and she sued the young author for what she felt was plagiarism. It's actually not plagiarism, it is copyright infringement because they did not seek permission. So this is an example of what? Two things, actually. It's an example. Here's the picture of that she found. And you can see the similarities. The young author thought that she had transformed it enough that it was transformative, so it would fall under fair use, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it doesn't fall under fair use. It's not transformed enough. You can see clearly that the picture was taken from the photograph, that the artwork was taken from the photograph, I should say. So this is a great example to show students what happens, or how when you use somebody else's work, that there is consequences for it. So this person did get sued and had to pay the artist for using her work. If she had just asked, she probably would have been able to use it for free. It's also an example of the confusion that is surrounding copyright infringement, because even the photographer felt that this was plagiarism, but plagiarism is a different, it's very different than copyright. Copyright is about taking somebody's creativity and reusing it without permission, and plagiarism is just copying and pasting, using something in a presentation word for word. There are different nuances to it, which is a different presentation that I give, so I won't go into it too much more here. So to use something protected by copyright, to get permission, you must either get a license with the owner to use it, buy or acquire the copyright, or confirm that your intended use falls under the exceptions. So to find somebody, again, in our fabulous world of the internet and social media, it's really easy to reach out to authors. I have students all the time find authors on Instagram or on Facebook, and they reach out, and the authors will reach back to them. Artists will answer them, and they'll say, yeah, use it. And it's a great practice, even if it falls under fair use and it's only going to be in the classroom. It is a great lesson to have students reach out to a professional author or a photographer or somebody and say, hey, I would like to use this in my slide deck for this presentation. Is that okay? Because there are times, right, when our work ends up on a website now too. So we have to think about that. So simplified, the most important aspects that we need our students to understand is that copyright was created to encourage creativity, that it is automatic, and that most importantly, it gives the creator the right to decide how their work is used. So it makes them decide who can make copies or prints of their work, who can make a derivative. So for example, like a book, from a movie from a book, who can distribute those copies and where they can be distributed, who can display the work, if it's public, if it's on a website, who can perform the work, whether that's digitally or in person, whether it's music or a play. Those are all things that copyright allows or gives the creator the right to do. Copyright does expire. 70 years or death. And it does cover all types of creative work in fixed form, but there are limitations. Not everything is protected, and there are exceptions that fall under fair use and the public domain. And just if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And if you guys see questions, just feel free to interrupt me. I have the chat kind of open, but I'm not looking at it directly. So just know that if you see a lot of questions coming in, you can certainly cut me off. So fair use. In the United States, we call it fair use. In the UK, I believe you call it fair dealing. Sometimes you can use copyrighted work without seeking the permission of the creator, and this is called fair use. So both of these are designed to promote freedom of expression, which is very critical in education, right? We want our students to feel freedom of expression. We want to encourage them to express themselves and be themselves. And we also, as teachers, need to be able to express ourselves. So it allows us to use unlicensed copyright within certain circumstances. So it's sort of like this legal counterbalance to copyright that allows for creativity. And if there is ever a dispute, you would consider the factors of fair use or fair dealing if it went to court. So as you can see, I put both up here just because I thought it was kind of interesting for me. This was a learning experience that I didn't really know. But the United States is a little bit more general. We're pretty vague, which I think why I run into so many teachers here that have so much issue with it. But in the UK, it's a little bit more specific what you would look at. So if you were to use something and then it came into review or somebody saw it, you would look at these non-commercial research for private study, criticism or review, reporting current events, illustration for instruction, quotation, or parody. So if it falls in one of those or more than one of those, then you're safe and you can use that work in your educational setting. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if it happens where you guys are, but here we now have people who troll school site websites, teachers' websites, and district websites looking for illegal artwork that's posted or novels. So fair use becomes this, you can't put it up on a website. So fair use comes into play all the time. Fair use is not educational immunity. It is just an exception that allows us to be creative within the walls of our classroom, because that's where it needs to be within this context of the educational classroom setting. Copyright, that's where we can implement fair use. So it has to be face-to-face, which also includes virtual. That is our classroom, extends beyond the walls. It has to be for instructional purposes, and it has to be in a non-for-profit educational institution. And it also, whatever you're using, has to be legally obtained. So the copy has to be legally obtained. So an issue that we come up with here is that we sometimes have outdated materials that are no longer in publication that we can't buy anymore, or we just didn't have enough and we got extra students, so we want to take those consumables and we want to make copies. That is not protected. That is when you need to reach out to the publisher and you need to ask permission. And some publishers will allow you to do it. Sometimes when you get text materials, that is already written in the contract. There's some that you can copy a certain number of pages, but again, that is something that you want to check with the publishers. Don't feel like you can just go and make copies, because that would be it wouldn't be legally obtained copies. So we just want to make sure that we all fit in. So again, this also means that teachers are really protected fairly broadly, but they do need to make sure that it's always connected back to the instruction. So if you are a English teacher or a theater teacher and you're studying Macbeth and you show a film clip of Macbeth to your class, you would be covered. But if you show them SpongeBob SquarePants on a day because as it's a reward, that would not be covered. That would be an illegal use of that show. So this is where I usually get a lot of questions, and I always have to say I'm not a lawyer because we do like to show movies to our students. Here on our very, very rare rainy days, that's what they like to do. And it's really not the intention, and you're not covered under fair use. So just so we are aware, if there are any questions about that, you can pop them in the chat. So how do we get our students to respect the work of others? The first step and the easiest way is to be a good role model when it comes to copying and using other people's work. You just need to be mindful and transparent in your practice. And when you use an image or a text created by somebody else, be transparent with your students about your process for making sure you're in the clear. If, for example, you have an image embedded in a slide deck or on your agenda, explain to them that you got it online. Take a few minutes to explain why you can use the material and explain that you know you're in the clear, and share with them the basics of the rule as well as your process. So if this was me in my classroom, I could tell them that I found this clip art using Flaticon, using an add-on for Google Slides that allows me to bring in free, legally acceptable, licensed work. And I could always add where I got it from, just always being a role model and being really mindful of how that it just takes an extra minute during your presentations to just draw attention to that, to make that conversation happen, to have them know that you have a license for it. So having said that, we can protect ourselves or make it easier for ourselves to always know that we as educators are in the clear and being good role models by using tools that give us free license or usage licenses that are for the classroom. So these are 3 really great add-ons for Google Slides. The Flaticon one is actually called Icons for Google Slides when you search it in the add-ons. But it's awesome. That one I love because you can change the color. At my school, we have to use the same branded colors all the time. So that's a really handy one because you can easily put in your custom color code and you can get your icons any color. Noun Project is another one that is wonderful. They have an extensive library that's ever growing. They do have some of their images are paid for and you have to get a prescription. But they have a really good selection that's free and their yearly rate is pretty reasonable, so it's worth it. And the last one is Free Clip Art, which has it's a pretty good selection. It's pretty vast. The only one that I would say if I was going to have my students do it, I would have them do this Google Slides or the Noun Project, just because I know that you can't search maybe inappropriate clip art, and free clip art is a little bit more open, so they might come across something that would maybe not be as appropriate. So just aware of those things. But these are all tools that your students can use if you are using Google Apps. Another way that we can make sure that the images that we use are legal is by doing legal Google searches. And so I'm going to switch, and you can still see my screen, I hope. But if I type in to Google and I come up here to tools, when I'm doing images, I can come and look at usage rights. And this is something that you can have your students do. You can come and look and you can show them that I go and I choose Creative Commons licenses and then I choose my picture. So that is one way that you can show your students that they can make sure that what we use is legal. Another way is the Explore tool, which is right in Google Slides and in Google Docs. And if I look at it in a Google Doc, It's right down here on the bottom, and it pops up. And you'll notice that within a Google Doc, it takes me to search straight out to Google, but it also knows what I've written, right? So it knows that my paper is about genetically modified crops. It's already giving me some suggestions. So if I click on the suggestion, it's going to give me some ideas. If I use one of these, I can cite it as a footnote, which is really nice for students because it makes it easy for them to use work, but to also be citing the source. If I go in and I choose an image, you'll notice down here at the bottom, the image is labeled for commercial use with modification. So they can always see the license at the bottom. And this can be something that you do with them, like that they have to search and find 3 different images with different licenses at the bottom. So that is a great tool. It also is an easy way to ensure that what we are doing in a mindful way, making sure that we are giving the creator their due, because it is too much. It can sometimes be overwhelming to make sure that you're copying and you're making sure the attribution is there. When you use those pictures, those images on Google, even though you can see the license on the bottom, you really do need to copy that license and include it in your presentation. And that can be a little bit overwhelming for your students and for you. So that is the #1 reason that I find that educators that come back and tell me that they had an issue, that's why. It's because we find ourselves sometimes in copyright infringement when we feel overwhelmed or we feel like we're running out of time or we need to do something really fast.
Karen, I would like to interrupt you here because we have a question about the use of videos from the YouTube in our classroom for educational purposes, and what is happening with the YouTube videos.
So YouTube is, you can use YouTube in your classroom as long as your one, your district allows it. I know that our district blocks YouTube for students, and sometimes it's hard for our teachers to get videos. But again, as long as the YouTube video has something to do with your class, and I know that there's a ton out there, especially if we go back to Macbeth, I can find every act of Macbeth in a small YouTube. So you can use that with your students. That would be absolutely legal as far as being covered under fair use. Netflix is the shady one. I don't know if you guys have Netflix, but if you look at Netflix's user agreement that you sign, it says that you can't use Netflix with a group of people. Actually, I have the, well, I can't go back to that. So I have there is verbiage that is in there that is just that you're not supposed to, that as the person who owns the license to Netflix, because we buy into their service, we're not supposed to use it or share it with anyone else in a large group. So a classroom could be considered a large group, but I have checked with the lawyers here, and Netflix, you're not in violation of copyright infringement, or you are protected under fair use as long as the movie is educational. You might be in conflict with Netflix users agreement, but that would be a hard thing that would be a hard way or thing to prove on their part too, or that would probably never come up. So I would think both of those things are okay as long as you're not showing, Disney movies. So teaching copyright, we shouldn't choose to teach it because it's easy, because it's not. Teaching copyright is hard. Being mindful of copyright is hard. It takes us to always stop, think, and cite. Think of it that way. So in the out of this, the best, what we want is to always give our students the skills to be good digital citizens. And because our world is this ever-changing place where our students have so much at their fingertips, we need to train them from kindergarten. to be respectful of others. If we don't, we're going to change how people create. We're going to change how the music industry, which already we have, if you think back to Napster, we've really changed how the music industry makes money. It's affected their livelihood. It's made them change how they do things. So some ways that we can help our students get out of the Google it and make it easier, because it can be time consuming, and because of that we do want to take shortcuts, are using tools like Photos for Class. This is a great resource. It's actually made from Storyboard That, which is a great cartoon or comic tool, but Photos for Class is filtered for students. They will not come up with anything inappropriate, and it downloads the image or it copies the image with the attribution as a watermark. So super easy. Students are saved if they always go to Photos for Class. If they use GIFs, as you saw I did, Giphy is a great Chrome extension, and the same thing. If you use the Chrome extension, you go there and you get your GIF, it will be, and I can show you right up here. I have my Giphy right here. If you open it up, you can see that on them is when I click, you can see that we have the attribution. So it's going to pull right in, and I'll always be legally using the information, citing where I got it from. It'll be there. I will be giving attributions where it should be. So these are just ways that we can always ensure that us, our students, we have it at our fingertips. It makes it easier, right? If we have these tools that we know will do the attribution for us, it will make us more likely to make sure that what we're using is good. So now we're thinking about usage licenses. So how about creating licenses for your classroom, for your students? So this is one of my favorite ways to get students to really think about and understand usage rights. It's to come up with different usage licenses for students to pick from on how they want to share their assignment. I came up with these 3. You can come up with different ones for your class culture, but it can be displayed. Everyone can see it. I don't care. You can put it anywhere, Ms. Lagola. You can put it in the classroom, on the walls, on our website. I'm so proud, so open, take my work. Or it can be shared with a selected group. Maybe the student just wants to share it with you and their table group, or just in the classroom, not like on a website or blog. Or maybe it's private. Maybe the student just wants to share with you and them. That's it. So it's nice to give them the idea that everything they do is a creative work. The work they do for us in the classroom is a creative work. They have put it in a fixed form and they're sharing it with you. If we change that vocabulary, we are always giving them the ability to have empathy and to understand what it takes to be a creator, right? So if we use words like copyright, fair use, we use license, shared, private, protected, we can really get them to think of what it is like to use somebody else's work. So instead of turning in work, share work. Each assignment is a creation, and they can really decide, give them the tools to decide how they want that creation shared, even within your classroom. With little kids, you can have stamps or stickers, or kindergarten, it could just be thumbs up, thumbs down. You could put bins in the back of your classroom with how they want it shared. It is up to you, but it's a nice way just to, again, for every day in our classroom, it doesn't take a lot to just change and to use this vocabulary. It's easy to do, but it is always at the end teaching that lesson of that when we use work, we have to give the rights. So this is a great step in with older students to use Creative Commons. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Creative Commons, but they are a wonderful site full of free resources, but they also offer licenses, 6 different licenses that students can choose from. So students can actually upload their own work and choose a license. I mean, and if you don't want your students to go and upload their work, you can just have them go and look at the 6 licenses that are available there, and that maybe, that can be a lesson in itself, or that can be something that's a discussion for them. So Creative Commons is a wonderful start to what's going to be your curated free resource class library. It's the perfect place to start. This is a little film that you can watch on your own. I'm kind of running down here on time, so I'm going to skip it. Oops, I think I'm going to skip it. I am going to skip it. I'll let you watch it. It just really explains Creative Commons to you, but that is something you can watch on the slide deck. So talking about sharing, what are the ways that you can share your creations with others? Once you get your class set up in a way that students are deciding how they want to share their work, it takes it into that deeper conversation of how did you decide who you wanted to share it with? Is there anyone you don't want to share it with? And as we have these conversations just about sharing, we're also building that class culture of safety for our students. Because maybe there is one student that is nervous about their work, or is, other students have poked fun at them for their work. And so this is something that protects them there too. So we're actually helping their social emotional as well when we're helping them understand that they don't have to share with just anyone. They are protecting themselves and their work, right? So, and how would you feel if someone else shared your work? That is the number one thing we want to get them to. We want them to understand I'm a creator, but what if Karen took my work and just shared it? How would that make you feel? So, when you get those papers, right, that their name isn't on it, put somebody else's name on it and put it on the wall. Somebody, the creator, will definitely come and let you know that it was theirs. So you'll not only find out who did the work, but it's also a great lead into a discussion about how it feels for someone else to get credit for something you did. Or you can just change the names. If you did an art project in class, you can change the names for a couple of kids when you put them up on the wall and just see how does it feel that now your name is on the wrong one. How does it feel that somebody else has credit for you? I will have to give a disclaimer here. I have been told by teachers of younger kids that it was problematic, that the teachers said, some of their kids, it was too much for them to see their name on something else and it made them cry. So you need to understand your class culture and what your kids can handle, but it is a good way just to get students to think about and again build that empathy towards creators and what it feels like if I worked really hard on something but then somebody else gets all the credit for it. You can also choose those students in your class who you know can handle it. You can bring them in on your little secret and it can be a game and they would probably love that, and you know who those students are as well, right? So there's many places online that we can go to find free books, images, audio, and that's all in the public domain. So there is the public domain pictures.net site, which is great. We talked about Creative Commons, and most libraries and some museums have an extensive collection of free work. If you just Google public domain, and I hate to say Google it, but if you do just Google public domain, you'll get a ton of resources. And I have a bunch at the end of this presentation. You might have gone to the end already to see. But just know things that go into the public domain go into the domain because copyright's expired. So either the artist has passed away, or it's been 70 years, or copyright was waived. Sometimes the artist just waives it or forfeits their rights, or the work wasn't applicable, didn't fall under copyright, so it would fall right into the public domain. Now, I will say using tools like public domain images and Creative Commons can be really challenging, and students will get frustrated when they can't find exactly what they want because they're not going to find that Marvel hero picture, right? They're not going to find what they know. But it's hard to break the Google habit. It really is hard, but this is an opportunity to get our students really thinking about their purpose. What idea do they want to convey? What do they want the image to do for their work? What is the connection of their image to their project? And how will the image add meaning? When they think about the purpose, you can help them come up with different keyword searches. And oftentimes what you'll find is that kids come up with stronger visuals and that the images now become more metaphors than just representations of literal ideas. So it's nice. It does, again, take some time and they will get frustrated, but the more that they do it, you are actually building and you're digging deeper and you're getting more deeper knowledge, deeper connections with images and words into your work. So I mentioned a little passing that I would highly recommend that you start a curated resource list. I did create a Google form to help you out. If you click on that form here, it'll make you make a copy. And it's just a link to a form that you can have your students use every time they do a project, every time they create something. As a class, you can create this ongoing list of resources so that students always have a place to go to find resources that they know are free to use, that have usage licenses that are appropriate for them to use in class. So this is an opportunity also to discuss the resources that they are using, because chances are some resources that they put on this list might not fall under fair use, and they might not be what you can use in class. But there's the discussion. It is the learning. It is an opportunity for discussion and learning. But it's a great start, and you can use the spreadsheet, share it with your class on Google Classroom or just someplace, post it so that they always know if I'm starting a project and I need an image, I'm going to go to this list. Or if I need some sound, I'm going to go to this list and I'm going to find it. Again, making copyright transparent in the classroom. This is how we do it. We always look for a license that we can use. So things to consider to get them really acquainted dealing with fair use and fair dealing every time they do work is just to ask these questions. And you can have these displayed all the time. Like, am I using this work in a way that is new, or I'm just replicating someone else's creation? Am I using it for research or a school project? How am I sharing the work? Will it be public? And did I give the creator credit? So just always having them think about what they're going to be doing and how they're using that work. So there are other ways. We've talked about a few that can protect ourselves by just using add-ons and going to sites where we know that what we're looking for will have the license that we want. But you can also limit your exposure. Like, you can use password protected spaces like your Google Classroom or any other learning management system if you're going to publish shared materials with your students instead of using a class webpage or a visible blog. That way you're just sharing it with your class. It's like it's in the class with the walls, as long as, again, you do have obtained it legally. So you do have those copies. Don't just make PDFs, photocopies of books and put it on your Google Classroom. That still would not fall under fair use. And know that there isn't an emergency, right? No matter how desperate the situation or noble your intentions, don't make and distribute copies of an entire book or workbook or guidebook or practice book, or even an entire page from a textbook. Just purchase enough copies for each student, or get permission from the owner to make copies, just to protect yourself. Avoid copying and distributed creative materials. Used published sources. Never copy and distribute an unpublished material. You have to reach out to the publisher for that. And when in doubt, reach out. If a publication or resource it's out of print, you can just reach out to the company or the publishing house to try to get it back in print. Sorry, my office lights just turned off. I have this little pig that I throw out of the window to get them to go back on. So always cite your sources, and here's a great way that you can do it using the TASL, title, author, source, and license. This is the information that we should always have when we're citing the source that we got. And if you don't have all this information, just use what you have. There are awesome tools out there with lots of great lessons that can strengthen the foundation for students' copyright and creativity. The one that I worked with is Great Common Sense, of course, has fabulous lessons, and so does ISTE Digital Citizenship. So those are really good tools for you to look at. Most important, make discussion of copyright and fair use routine. The more opportunities students have on a daily basis to interact with the principles of copyright and fair use, the more natural it will become. So things to remember are just be transparent. When in doubt, get permission. And that should be with your students too. Make sure your students see what you do. Make sure that they see on your slide that you have cited it, that you're giving attribution. Provide links all the time to outside sources. And just know, citing's not a substitute for having permission. If it is using someone's work, you can't just cite them if you need to get permission. And respect intellectual property. So we talked a lot just about using those terms with students, and here's just a list of some of the vocabulary terms that you want to start to just use every day in your classroom. You want to use creator, private, shared. You want them to start to think about that. License, have those conversations about their work, start there, and then build that out into the work that they use from other people. So at the end of my deck, I have a bunch of resources for you, and you can see down at the bottom they're from a colleague of mine from a presentation she did. So I took, because we were making the same thing, so she is given credit where credit is due. There's audio. They're kind of broken down by what you would need. So these would also be a great start to a class curated library for you. And that is all I have. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you have any questions, please let me know. All the resources that I used are here at the end if you want to read or look at anything that I used to come up with or to create my presentation.
We thank you very much, Karen, for all these interesting things that you shared with us today, and the many ways to protect ourselves and our students for all these important issues regarding copyright and fair use. I would like to point out that for me, at least for my part, that I encourage my students to use, for example, when they prepare studios, to use music from royalty-free music, but also giving the credits, although there are some parts there which are free to use. And then to the teachers that we train in eTwinning to create more or less their own material. For example, shoot photos, record music, and they use it when they create videos or related things.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Google Drawings, they can create anything. They don't have to take clip art. You can too. You can make it. You can always use GarageBand, all these audio tools that students can use to make their own beats. That's a wonderful addition.
Yes, and you gave me the chance to recall the previous year about GarageBand. For example, we did the project with my students and students from Turkey about music and digital citizenship and media literacy and so on. And they had the chance to go through music in all these topics and to create music. And it was amazing that at the end they created presentations using the Canva tool and the account that belonged to the classroom, and then they created their own music using GarageBand or similar apps in their mobile phones to use it in the presentation.
Yes, that's wonderful. Canva's a great tool. I love that. That is exactly what we want. We want our students to be creative all the time. So much better to get them used to being the creator than having to look for anybody else's work.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So don't hesitate to create your own material, and of course encourage your students to do the same.
Exactly.
And
yeah, if you can create it, make it yourself.
Yes, instead of searching, you could dedicate a lot of time and time consuming from your precious time to search and find something instead of creating. Okay. Is there any other question? Because I think that I answered some of the questions here in the chat room. You were mentioned earlier about platforms with public domain and so on. And I mentioned in the chat box the example of the Europeana digital platform regarding our cultural heritage material. And in Europeana, there are pieces that they have the public domain or pieces that are protected. So we have to be very careful on what we use and how to search and find the free to use material there.
Oh, thank you.
And regarding copyright, eTwinner asked here if it is possible to download the presentation and use it with your permission afterwards.
Absolutely. Just give me
And-
credit. But take anything you want. I am free. It is always anything I make is for teachers. Anything you can use it.
Okay, the recording as well as the presentation will be uploaded in the Creative Classroom subpage related to the experts, and you can find it later in the page. Of course, we can use it with giving the credits to Karen. Oh, Karen, there are some eTwinners that are interested in contacting you.
Ah, here. So I will put in.
Yeah.
I'm happy to book. That's not the email I want. I can put that slide back up. Let me do that. Here, let me do this. And here, whoops, wrong slide. There's my email, and that's my Twitter. And I can put my Twitter. I don't know if any of you are on Twitter.
You can find Karen on Twitter. It was easy for me to find her.
Yeah, there I am on Twitter. And there is my email as well. Feel free to reach out. I love this. This was really wonderful for me. Thank you so much for having me.
We thank you. And we hope that eTwinners can use a lot of the creative ideas that were suggested by you today.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear back if you do that, if you set up licensing in your classroom. Let me know how it goes. I love when teachers come back and tell me that it's working or how they changed it. So that's lovely.
Okay.
I'm going to have to run and start my work day.
Karen, do you think that we should come back with a follow-up activity to the eTwinners? Do you have some a kind of homework to suggest to them?
Oh, well, let's have that. We could do that. So let's try to implement one of the things that we talked about today. So either setting up licenses in your classroom, how students share, or just starting to use that vocabulary, or actually even easier, just starting to be mindful when you're sharing. So just bringing the attention to what pictures and the process that you took when you created this slide deck and I used this picture. How did I find the picture? Where did I go? Taking that time to just show them, show your students your process.
Just asking some questions. Or I would like to highlight this activity to create because we are the creative classroom. So it would be better for them to create licenses with their students.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, yes, it is. So I think it would be more creative for them.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here with us. I hope you enjoyed it as we did.
I did. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I hope to share with you again sometime. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Karen. Bye. Thank you.